I heard you mention that the moon could be hollow.
Well, that's an oversimplified model. There is this school of thought out there, the moon is hollow. And that goes back really to the Apollo days. But let's put it this way, there is a lot of, the moon is a relatively low density object. And what that means is there's probably lots of voids within the moon. That's very likely. That might be, to me, the best way to explain the nature of the moon. See, I, I started looking into the mysteries 50 years ago. 50 years ago. I don't exaggerate, 50 years ago. And I soon realized that there are some things that are best left unsaid. Then coming to believe that the traditions, the legacy of inherited traditions that we've now got access to from all over the world, from many, many cultures, from many different historical epochs and so on, we're in a position now, in a unique position where we can decipher those on a level now and within the last, say, quarter century, the last generation, say, in a way that nobody was able to do for, who knows, 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 years. We're in a perspective now that we're beginning to see things. The earth is revealing, it's yielding up its secrets to us in a way that was never available before. See? And within this new framework of thinking, this new paradigm, yes, we have to go back and reconsider pretty much everything. And just as we can look at the ancient stories now and see that, well, why is there over 100 cultures that have stories about gigantic floods that almost wiped out the human race and left a straggling group of survivors that become the ancestors of this particular cultural group? We now realize that events that are catastrophic enough, you mentioned it, catastrophic enough to basically cause a complete reset of civilization, happen far more frequently than anybody had realized a generation or two generations or three generations ago. Now, one of the things that that, for example, if you're living on the coast of Florida and a big hurricane is coming. Now, 100 years ago, there was no radar. You couldn't turn the radio on or the internet and get the latest update of where the hurricane is moving. You pretty much had to sit there, and when it came, you had to ride it out. So you know that this hurricane is coming, right? And you live on the coast. What are you probably going to do? You evacuate.
Okay.
You evacuate. Yeah, I mean, look, you've got huge long lines of traffic now on these hurricane-prone areas. When the hurricane is coming, there's people evacuating. They're leaving, right? In fact, you even have mandatory evacuations. You evacuate. But what do you do if you're faced with the prospects of a global catastrophe?
Okay, we got the moon.
Oh, the
There you
moon.
go.
Well, of course, now we're getting totally into the realm of science fiction, right? I'll tell you, once you begin to put the pieces together, the whole story is laid out. And it's almost, I mean, it's so big and so profound that it's virtually unbelievable. And yet, the more you learn, the more you realize that it's the outrageous story that's really the one that's most real. This is from way back in 2007, but by then, scientists were already realizing that what I've been saying all along, we're cosmically vulnerable. So, what do you think is the first idea that they're proposing? Well, a lunar arc, proposed in case of deadly impact on Earth. The moon should be developed as a sanctuary for civilization in case of a cataclysmic cosmic impact, according to an international team of experts. NASA already has blueprints to create a permanent lunar outpost, but that plan should be expanded to include a way to preserve humanity's learning, culture, and technology if Earth is hit by a doomsday asteroid or comet, said Jim Burke of the International Space University in France, that still exists, by the way. Burke, once a project manager on some of the earliest American lunar landings, now heads an ISU study on surviving a collision with a near-Earth object. An impact of the size that wiped out the dinosaurs hasn't happened since long before the rise of humans, he pointed out. Yet scientists' expanding knowledge of asteroids and craters left throughout the solar system has created consensus that Earth remains vulnerable to a civilization-crushing collision. And what we know now from what we've learned in 2007, even more so. Okay? This calls for the creation of a space-age Noah's Ark, Burke said. Humans are just beginning to send trinkets of technology and culture into space. NASA's recently launched Phoenix Mars lander, for example, carries a mini disc inscribed with stories, art, and music about Mars. The Phoenix lander is a precursor mission in a decades-long project to transplant the essentials of humanity onto the moon and eventually Mars. The International Space University team is now on a more ambitious mission to start building a lunar biological and historical archive, initially through robotic landings on the moon. Laying the foundation for rebuilding the terrestrial internet, plus an Earth-Moon extension of it, should be a priority, Burke said. The founders of the group, Alliance to Rescue Civilization, notice the acronym, ARC, right, agreed that extending the internet from the Earth to the moon could help avert a technological dark age following, for example, a nuclear winter, acts of terrorism, plague, or asteroid collisions. And I'd also mention that they left off that list would be gigantic volcanic eruptions. But the group also advocates creating a moon-based repository of Earth's life, complete with human staff facilities to, quote, preserve backups of scientific and cultural achievements and of the species important to our civilization. So there we go. It's all
That
right.
makes perfect sense. You know, it's like backing up your computer. It's very risky to go without backing your stuff up on an external hard
That's
drive.
right.
So yeah, it
Now,
makes sense to use the moon as our Earth's external hard drive.
Okay, so now let me just propose this as just an outrageous hypothesis to think about. What if the secret has been all along that we've already done that? Not now, not in our modern incarnation of civilization, but once upon a time, we've already done that.
Visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe put it there. If you choose, God put it there. Maybe.
I am not this body in terms of consciousness, and consciousness can go places where the body cannot.
And it has very distinct features of a satellite dish. It's got the dish itself, the crater shape. It's got a long spike that appears to come out of the middle. All sorts of stuff that looks exactly like a satellite dish on Earth.
He describes large structures like hangars, roads, towers, and machinery. Across craters and chasms, there are bridges, evidence of a lot of activity, industrial activity. Some locations, he doesn't see anything, but others he was able to view large cliffs, see craters, dunes of white powder, all the things you'd expect to see on the moon. Finally, Swan comes across something interesting and confusing. He describes seeing tracks on the surface, tracks that seem to have been made by tractors or some kind of machinery.
In the years leading up to NASA's moon landing, their Soviet counterparts had great success with probes, satellites, and planetary exploration. One particular probe captured an image some theorists hail as early photographic evidence for extraterrestrial life. In 1965, Zond 3, while en route to Mars, captured some of the first detailed images of the moon's far side, revealing its features in unprecedented detail. Though this was a significant achievement, it was only a secondary objective for the Zond program. The primary aim was the development of remote-controlled robotic devices for planetary exploration. From approximately 10,000 kilometers away, Zone 3 captured images covering about 70% of the moon's previously uncharted side. Before contact was lost, 25 of these images were transmitted to Soviet scientists. One of these images ignited a fierce debate, which amongst some still rages today. It allegedly showcases a massive tower estimated to stand 3.5 miles tall, Ufologists have also claimed that the monolith may be just one of many that have been discovered, and potentially concealed by space agencies around the world, indicating an advanced spacefaring species. The spire structure is even theorized to serve as a launch pad for extraterrestrial spacecraft, or as a sophisticated communication device. Mainstream science has rejected these claims, maintaining that the shapes seen in the images can be explained rationally as geological formations and craters, or simply an artificial anomaly in the photograph.
Outrageous idea. We don't even need, it's so ridiculous we don't even need to think about it, right? It's so contrary to our conceptions of ancient history that we shouldn't even waste time considering such outrageous possibilities, right?
Well, the truth is stranger than fiction.
We get into some really strange territory there. If we say it's artificial, what does that even mean? That somebody constructed it or something? Or, I mean, who or what would have some capacity to even undertake such a project?
These are all great questions.
Yeah. Your question. Yeah. So I pointed out on this particular slide, this was August 2007, and my title for this slide is An Ancient Idea is Revived and Promptly Forgotten. Because it's 2007. What are we doing here? 10, we're 18 years later. And I'm here trying to revive, say, look, this was actually proposed 17, 18 years ago. Of course, we've done nothing except, not as the government so much, but at least the private sector now is stepping into the void. And I'm like 100%, 110% behind the private sector space programs. And I want to see NASA revived, not because I have any particular affinity for government programs, but I believe that the imperative on us now is to make this transition to a cosmic civilization as quickly as possible. And I would like to set out a goal of saying one generation. One generation. By the time Angel is graduating from college, we're a spacefaring civilization. That's what I want to see. In this particular program that I've got here, I've come at it from two perspectives. One, the scientific perspective, and then the other, the traditional, which is the accounts, the legends and stories about the moon and moon gods and moon goddesses and so on. And so what I find, though, is that those two narratives, which one would think from conventional framework of thought, would be completely separate, following their own paths, right? I suggest that they're doing this. They're converging, because what the ancient traditions are telling us, they're actually providing some answers to us of some of the very mysteries you just raised, some of the questions you just raised. See? And there was a reason why our ancestors were obsessed with observing the moon. We know that, right? I mean, obsessed with observing the moon.